Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Hello. So today we're talking about internet safety. We're talking about the importance of keeping your children, keeping your students safe when they're online. And we're doing this with the expert in the field, Gretchen Thompson. Hello, Gretchen. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you guys today?
Doing great.
Well, I would like to introduce our first guest, Gretchen. She is Vice President of Sales at Gaggle, not to be confused with Google. It's Gaggle. She's also a public speaker, and she speaks around the country about internet safety, keeping our kids safe on the digital playground. She also talks a lot to executive women that are leaders in the country, and she talks about social emotional health. Gretchen and I have known each other for years, and I have to say, she is a spunky lady. We meet at conferences a lot of times, and the last time we met, I will say, Gretchen ran out of the conference and bought us all some In-N-Out burgers so that we didn't have to eat that rubber chicken that they typically serve at the conference. So she is one of these spunky, fun women. One of the things I want to introduce her with that I think really sets up the scene for this is one of the talks she gives is talking about the digital playground. And she says that our students are out on this digital playground. And right now, everyone is there, right? Due to COVID. All of the kids are doing some kind of digital work. And the question she asks is, who's on recess duty? Who's making sure these kids are safe?
Yeah.
So welcome, Gretchen. And we are excited to see you. And I know you're going to tell us a little bit about who is safe and how you're keeping kids safe. But my first thing I would like to visit with you about today is every time I see you at a conference, you tell me about the stars on the walls at Gaggle. And I think to myself, this should be a Netflix series, Stars on the Walls, because it has such a popular, to me, it's popular because I love to hear these great stories about what's happening at Gaggle. What are the stars on the walls? And tell us just a story or two.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me as a guest. And yes, Jerry, those animal fries with the In-N-Out burger was a real treat. I miss seeing everybody out in the field so much and being able to spend time with you guys. So I'm glad that you asked about the stars and that you talked about the stars on the wall and the stories that we tell. At Gaggle, we're not a filter, we're not a firewall. We really act as the insurance to the filter and the firewall at a school district and support one-to-one devices being deployed. And we do that through Microsoft and Google, just to kind of give you guys a better overview of how we're able to see things and what those stars mean to us. We have an awesome safety team, awesome service team. Gaggle really is all hands on deck. It's mission work for me. As you know, my background's in education. So it's really, really important to me to be able to do this work. And, one of the things that our safety team does is they create a mural for us every year where, we really kind of think in lives saved versus numbers and growth at our company. And with that, the mural this year was Stars on the Wall. And so we were able to really identify students that were in a state of crisis, whether that was them journaling or sharing with a buddy that they weren't feeling very good about themselves, or, if there are any instances of bullying where we were able to intercept that bullying and let the district know, hey, this kid is getting picked on, that kind of thing. We are able to really take a look at that and identify those kids in crisis and, really pride ourselves on being able to help save a student life by being able to get a hold of the district and intervene before it's too late. And, this year we were able to, I'm so proud of this, help save 927 children this year, this past school year alone. Last year it was 722. So obviously we have not doubled in size, but there has been an increase in mental health and that concern obviously with student and staff. And so I'm just so proud of that. And one of the stories that I can share with you, and it's sensitive, Jerry, I've shared lots of stories with you. As educators, we speak in stories. And, this one was really sensitive to me and really hit home and made me want to get up every single morning to go and do this work. We had a young lady that was a high schooler out of Wisconsin, and she sent a note to her friend early in the morning, around 6:30 in the morning, and had said, hey, you're a great friend. Thank you for everything that you've done for me. Understand that I'm going to strike down anyone that comes your way that could be a bad guy or hurt you in any way. This is not your fault. Today is my last day. Please take care of my family, my dog. Today is goodbye. And that was an email that she sent to her friend early in the morning before school started. What we were able to do is intercept that email before her friend received it, because obviously you guys know that would have been heart-wrenching because, obviously a child gets that before they're going to school and it's their friend. They don't necessarily have the frontal lobe development to know what to do in a crisis situation.
Yeah.
And so what we were able to do is intercept that email from the recipient getting it. We were able to contact the school district and get someone on the phone immediately. We have a process where we call and text district safety people. That could be a principal, it could be a guidance counselor, it could be an assistant principal, maybe someone at the administrative level that is a backup to those people at the individual building level. And we were able to reach someone who said, thank you, I've got it, we'll take care of it, we appreciate you calling Gaggle. And then, we step off at Gaggle, once we've done our work to get a hold of that district and let them know that a child is in crisis. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And in this case, we received a call a couple weeks later from the safety team saying that they wanted to share with us what had happened. And I'm telling you guys, this man on the phone who is safety was barely able to get through the phone call because he was so choked up. And it was because he wanted to tell us that story and where we were able to help save this child or put that star on the wall, essentially. And it was a situation where they called emergency. They had found out that she had left for school. They had called the parents and she had already left for school. They called an emergency crew into the building at the high school level to comb the building and see if they could find her. And they essentially did find her. She was actually hanging from the bathroom stall. And they were able to cut her down within 30 seconds of her passing away and resuscitate her.
Oh,
she's alive today.
30 seconds.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So that's the work that we do. And that's, a story, obviously you can see I'm impacted. It's a story that makes you go to work every day and like to do that work. So
yeah, it's both heartwarming and heart-wrenching at the same time. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Oh, it's tough stuff. Yeah, it's tough stuff. But it's real. We don't know what we don't know. I think all of us here from an education perspective can say, you think you have a good idea on how your kids are communicating. You put things in place where these adults can work with these children and have that one-to-one communication and get an identifier of a child not being okay. A lot of the stuff that they share is in writing and Google Docs, and emails, in chat rooms, hangout scenes where they're talking about how they're feeling, and if we can get a pulse on that, it's an amazing thing as not only a district, as a community and, what we do as partners in this industry. So.
And Gretchen, you said that this year it was like 700 and some suicides that you caught before they happened, and last year it was in the 500s. Is that correct?
So no, so 18, 19, it was 722.
Okay.
And then in 1920, we had 927 lives saved.
So I recently read some statistics that in the 80s, anxiety was like in the teens, like 14% of kids had anxiety. And now it's like in the high 40, 50% of kids are having this. So are you seeing increases every year in this?
Oh, certainly. Yes. It's the one thing that I see as an increase that is just really a struggle for us is some of these younger kids. This is not just high school and middle school.
Right.
Primarily districts will think, okay, this is happening at the high school level. There's been such an increase in middle school, but we're seeing it at the elementary school level as well. We just had to intervene with a little third grader last week who was talking about taking her life. And so in those situations, right, it's being aware. You have to think about, the state of the media, right? We're seeing so much of the media. We all know 13 Reasons Why it came out. There was a lot of things in the last couple of years that has not only tried to support mental health and anxiety, and it's okay to talk about that, and it's okay for you to be struggling, but it also really paints a larger picture and makes these kids start to, really analyze, okay, do I have a mental health issue? Does my friend, right? And so there's a,
Okay.
I hate to say it this way, a copycat effect as well in fitting in, right? Fear of missing out is huge for kids. And sometimes missing out on typical conversations that are being shared that they might not know anything about, they want to fit into. And then they expand these conversations, and nobody has any idea that these talks are happening to intervene and be like, hey, this has gotten really out of control. Can we take it a step back? Are you okay? Were you trying to, support your friend? Like, what is going on, right? And so a lot of that is giving them that anxiety. And more than anything, I can speak on behalf of our parents, and things that we have heard is that these kids are up all night. Think about if a child is being bullied, right? When we were younger, if you were bullied, you knew that you got to get out of school and go home and hopefully have dinner with your family. And there was no way to be on any sort of technology or even a phone call. I mean, we had shared calling, right? I know we're dating ourselves, but we had call waiting. Our friends could call and our parents were in the kitchen while we were talking to a friend. Now, they have their own devices. They can go into their room. They might be sleeping, they might not. They're able to Snapchat, text, etc. And it's constantly where a child can be reached, right? So they don't have any escape. If that child's being bullied, their option is to either respond and try to fight back and have the bully continue to poke, or to not say anything and to have that bully say, oh, you're not going to answer me? Oh, well, that must be that you're a wimp, right? It's not easy all around. And I don't want to just talk about bullying. That's another level right here, right? But I can tell you this, I think we all know that bullies do not become bullies because they're just a bully. You have to learn that bullying mentality, and it comes from somewhere else. So they're just not the bad guys either. They need just as much help as the kid that's actually being bullied. And so, I always try to say to everybody, it's not just about the quote unquote bad kid. It's about the sad kids too. And it's about those kids that don't have a party to go to on a Friday night or aren't invited to an activity, right? And they're sitting alone, and maybe their parents have to work, or maybe their parents just are not attentive, right? And they're sitting by themselves. And those are the kids that we more often than not see journaling and trying to talk out their feelings.
Yeah, and sitting by themselves, but then also having in their face all of the parties and whatever going on that they are not included in. So it's just compounded. Not only they're alone, but they're also faced with the fact that everyone else is not. So it's awful. And so I guess
Jamie, 100%. I mean, they see it on Snapchat, and they see, think about that too. I always say that when I'm actually presenting. Think about when you wouldn't get invited to something and you had heard from a girlfriend, for instance, that she had been invited, and you'd be sad and be like, I don't know why I wasn't included. Now they just don't answer. And then all of a sudden you can look on Snapchat and see where they all are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that form of rejection and that fear of missing out is really compounded. And so to answer your question, Jerry, 100% as far as the increased anxiety. I mean, obviously us talking through this, there's reasons why, and they're not sleeping. These kids, when they stay up all night on technology, they're not getting the rest that they need either, right? And that's not good for their development.
Yeah. Yeah. How has COVID, I mean, we know the increases from last year. Has COVID played a role in those increases, would you say?
It's been a different increase. It's not that there's been so many increases in, let me take you back prior to COVID, right? I always talk about that window of March 9th through May 22nd, essentially, of last year. That was the most impactful for not only us as a partner to our districts, but also for our districts, and again, for anyone that is listening to this, anybody in education, any parent that is trying to support their child's education, like kudos to you, because I feel guilty, right? I feel guilty that I'm not in education right now, being able to get in the trenches and help, but I'm thankful that I'm actually working for an amazing company that looks out for student safety, and I can put my education background into that and be a voice for those kids that can't say something themselves, right? And so, prior to COVID, we were seeing a lot more, the suicide self-harm piece of what we see is pretty pretty much the same. There has been obviously a slight increase based on COVID and these kids being alone. Where we've really seen more of an increase in instances and a decrease, there's been a decrease in violence to others and weapons being brought onto campus because these kids were not in school, right? And so that wasn't an option. Where we've seen an increase is the domestic abuse and the sharing of, child pornography, whether that has been predator sharing, whether that has been child-to-child sharing. We all know that kids like to experiment and they miss each other and they're sharing inappropriate pictures. And then a huge increase in chat rooms, group chatting in Teams and Hangouts. That has been incredibly huge. We actually, in that window that I just gave you, we actually turned on over 500,000 kids in almost a 3-week period to protect them in their district safety.
Wow.
Well, Gretchen, so that our listeners understand, Gaggle is a company that school districts buy your service. Can you, in
Correct.
your elevator speech about just how that would work, just quickly?
Yeah, for sure. So what happens is, we're a machine learning algorithm and we have a proprietary anti-pornography scanner where, the districts need to be able to, per CIPA compliance and E-rate, be able to protect their students in an internet digital environment. And so what Gaggle does is we come in to support anything where, students would be specifically within their district issued devices. We're not interested in looking at their social media. We're not interested in looking at their private accounts. That's not something that we do. There is not a situation of us wanting to big brother anybody. What we're trying to do is, protect the acceptable use policies that our parents sign off on, saying, hey, if I sign off on this, I expect the district to best protect my child in the digital technology. And that's exactly where we come into play, where we're protecting their email and their Drive accounts, where these kids are sharing information, communicating with one another, communicating with their teachers, making sure that they're not communicating with outside sources that could be harmful or allowing outside sources to come in and communicate with them. And so in that, it's a wonderful tool because in protecting those kids, there's greater learning that's going on and there's greater collaboration. On the back end of things, children are trying to figure out their way, right? It's the same thing. If you were outside on the playground, and Jerry, we talk about this a lot, the digital playground, right? It doesn't have to be, the digital playground is not just within the brick and mortar, it's outside of that. And even more so now in our virtual learning environments. But you have someone on the playground to better protect children. And, a moderator might be out there and all of a sudden 2 kids decide to get in a fight. That moderator's out there to try to break up that fight and actually, based on, best practices and safety, identify what that discipline is, or if that child just needs to be sat down and talked to and find out if they're struggling or having a hard time. If you saw that fight that a child shared within your district digital tools, where they have videotaped that fight, that is something that the district would want to know, because those kids are sharing that information and it's your students. And so that's where we come in and we can actually see that information and let the district know, so that, districts knowing their students and their parents best, they know how to, based on the best practices of safety, like what they would have done on the playground, actually have that conversation with the student, the parents, or anyone else that needs to be involved.
Right.
So that's a little bit about what we do. And so a district would come to us, let us know, hey, we're interested in protecting either our email or our Drive, or, working with, their LMS, which is Canvas, or, hey, we have a filter, could you support our filter? It could be Content Keeper. We're interested in a, tip line. That's our, tip line that we have that's incorporated into our GSM services, which is Gaggle Safety Management. We're looking for something that can protect our chat, communication, and Hangouts and Teams specifically. That's where we would come in and be able to better protect those students. And so what happens is, the machine learning algorithm and the proprietary pornography scanner will, scan to be able to detect if there's concern with word alert or skin or anything like that. At that point, it gets passed to our live safety team. And that team is incredible. They're a group of sociologists, psychologists, suicide prevention. They have backgrounds in rape crisis. They are, security, police, right? They're going to be able to take a look at that information because they know what they're looking for and identify if that child is really in crisis or if it's just a false alarm. If a picture comes through with a mother-daughter getting a pedicure, not a big deal. We're going to let that go away. But if all of a sudden we see a picture come through with a 7th grade girl that is tied to a bed naked with a sign that says, help me, we're going to jump on it all over. Just similar to the story I told you about the star with the little girl that had actually sent a note about wanting to take her life.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
I know, this is heavy.
Your company really is the recess duty monitor that's out there watching what is happening on that playground and reporting what's going on back to districts.
Yeah, and if anything, you know, I'm so thankful about that too, especially with our student services, our counselors, you know, with what you had talked about, just the anxiety level is so high right now, right? The depression, the mental illness, you know, our counselors, you having a child that does this, right? They are doing everything they can to best protect their kids. And it's just another window where we can help, you know, show them what's going on. Again, you don't know what you don't know. If you've got that quiet kid that shakes hands and, you know, is nice to all the teachers and always shows up for his class, even if it's on Zoom, and is smiling, we don't know what's going on the back end unless they journal something that we see or they share something with a friend. And that's where we're able to get in there, intervene, give those counselors a heads up, those building administrators a heads up so that they can actually take appropriate action and help that child. You know, we're not here to have them get in trouble. We're here to actually prevent them from getting in trouble or going down a path where we could lose them.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Great tool.
Really incredible. Do you, is there a particular age range that you see, that you pick up troubles with?
You know, no, it's, you know, like I had said earlier, you know, it's primarily, our districts are concerned mostly about middle school and high school. But, you know, I say to everybody, we'll do whatever we need to do with whatever your budgets are and your windows of allotted services, right? So you might have your younger ones in K through 3 that might only be working in Drive for their, you know, collaboration. Right. Whereas, you know, at the middle school, high school level, they're working in email and Drive a lot of the time. I tell everybody, let us help you and let's protect the entire district as a whole, because what we don't want to see is a situation where, you know, you don't think you're going to have one of those littles do something, right? And then all of a sudden one does and we weren't monitoring it, right? And you know, a perfect example of that is we had a little girl, is another storytelling time for me, but we had a little girl who was a 2nd grader with her group of friends doing a daily 5, and they were in a Google Doc doing their daily 5 and exercise on their reading. And in the middle of it, it turned into a chatting communication versus learning, where she just randomly, you know, she's little. She's excited that she's reading and writing, right? She just randomly sent a note to those people saying, hey, are you guys going to be with your daddy this weekend? And they all responded, and she said, oh, well, you know, do you guys play the butt game? And our algorithm picked up on the word but she had spelled it B-U-T instead of B-U-T-T, and we still picked it up. You know, 21 years of advanced machine learning, we're going to pick up a lot of different things from a spelling standpoint, phrasing standpoint, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it immediately got flagged and sent to a live safety person who read through it and identified that this little girl was talking about the butt game and that she gets chased around and naked and spanked, and then she gets a prize. And we knew immediately, her being in 2nd grade, she doesn't know that there's anything wrong when she's with her dad. But 3 years from now, she's going to know that something's wrong if this continues. And so we did alert the district, and the district handled it. But that right there is a win for us, right? Had they not been monitoring the younger grades and her just casually doing a learning exercise where she wanted to chat with her friends, we wouldn't have caught that, you know? And so that's a win. You know, I always say saving life, you know, a lot of times it's related to suicide, self-harm, weapons being brought onto campus. I mean, that day we saved a life too, because we all know what could happen 3 years from now, you know, and the effects that could have on her.
I just love the stories that you share of how you've helped kids. It's just so heartwarming.
There's so many of them, right? So many of them, but you know, they're hard to share, but it's, you know, using my voice to get the message out there. That's what I care about, you know, because it's so important.
Yeah. My gosh. So, you know, when I grew up, we had, as you mentioned, you know, we had the house phone, and I think when I was a teenager, we had our own phone, but still, I think the biggest technology innovation was cable and the microwave, right? So now with this, right, those were big deals, I remember. So how do parents, because Gaggle is for schools, right? But parents, how do parents navigate this digital world with multiple devices? How can they do their part? What can they do?
Well,
What
and
are some tips?
yeah, we get so many notes from parents. We have parents say all the time, "Oh my gosh, is our district using Gaggle?" And obviously, we don't provide that information, right? Every district is private, and they let us know whether they choose to share and be an advocate for us, or still advocate for us but keep it internal. It's pretty private information. We're very obviously compliant with data privacy, beyond compliant.
Of course.
I will tell you that. The thing that I always encourage parents to do, I know that I shared some information with you as far as some links that parents and districts can go to better identify apps that kids are going onto. It's interesting because, the minute you give them an email or they create their own email, the world is their oyster, essentially. They are, learning from getting into these apps, even though some of these apps aren't the best experience for them, right? And so, a couple things that I always say to parents is, remember, you're the parent, you're the adult.
Right.
You don't have to be their friend, and now there's so many parents that are, two parents working in a household, right? They feel guilty because they're absent from their child. When they get home at night, they want to be able to really, almost helicopter and find out everything that's going on and control what's happening. And on the back end, kids, they don't like rules, but they do like guidelines. And so sometimes our rules as parents need to be more of guideline and options, right? So like an example that I just shared with a parent last week is I was like, okay, well, so your high schooler is telling you that you don't have a right to take their phone away, but yet you pay for their phone. Well, yeah. I said, okay, so give the option of, hey, it's totally cool. If you want to get your own phone, that's fine. I'll take you to the store. You can go ahead and get your own phone. It's about $800, about $100 a month. You have a job. You should be able to pay for that. That's no problem. Or you can continue to use your device. I have no problem with that. But all I'm asking you to do is put it down at 10 o'clock at night so you can get some good sleep and put it in this basket. All of our devices are going into this basket in the kitchen, including my own, because I have a tendency to stay up late and I have a tendency to get in the weeds with YouTube and, my LinkedIn, and it's not helping me because I need to be able to rest as well. So those are the options. What do you think about that?
Yep.
And when you give them two options that essentially aren't great, you pick one, right? Yeah. So you're not really setting them up for the rules, you're giving them the boundaries, and the earlier you can do that with your kids, just like, it's a routine, right? Everybody meets at the dinner table at 6:30 and we all eat dinner together. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody at 10 o'clock puts their devices in a basket. It's part of our routine, right? And it takes 3 weeks to get into a new routine or 3 weeks to break a habit, traditionally. So it'll take some time and you have to stick with it, but it'll make a difference, and then just knowing what apps your kids have on their phone. If you're paying for those services, for those kids to be able to use their device, it's your responsibility to know where those guards go and what they might be looking into, and having those conversations. The more you have those conversations as a parent with those children, the more they're going to feel like you're actively engaged and you have a better knowledge than they ever think you will. And so really take a look at those apps and say, hey, how does this work? I know that you might not have this on your phone, but I heard about this from doing some research. Talk to me about how this app works. I can guarantee you, if your child knows how that app works, they probably have it on their phone.
Really, really good tips that, and again, it's not about restricting, it's about keeping them safe. And I love your concept of choice. It's really important to allow them to feel that they are part of the process and we're not just imposing something on them, and allowing them that choice. I mean, it's important in the classroom, it's important at home, because then they can see that they do have the power to make that choice. And it's not so much that we're just placing it on them, but it doesn't seem as restrictive that way.
Parents need to understand that their kids are doing more than we realize that they're doing, right? That's how they learn and that's how they experiment. And so, it's okay for your child to mess up. It's okay for your child to mess up at school, right? Those are teachable moments, and that's teaching good digital citizenship so that they might not do it again. And the earlier that you start, primarily under 10 years of age, to have these conversations, the more they retain moving into their middle school and high school years.
But Gretchen, you mentioned something that I think is really important, and that is modeling for your students, for your children, what needs to be done, putting your phone in the basket as well. Because we'll go out to dinner and I see adults modeling behavior that we don't want to see in kids. And I think that that's an important piece as well, to show them how we need to behave and what the appropriate behavior is with our.
Oh, I think it 100%. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. I mean, I have adult children where they bring their phones to the table and I'm sitting there and, I'm in technology. I can sit on the computer and have my phone on me and type all night. And I'll literally put down my phone and put down my computer and sit there all by myself and go 15 minutes in and then be like, does anyone see that there's a problem here?
Yeah.
And they'll look up and be like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm eating dinner all by myself, but we're supposed to be eating as a family.
Yeah.
This isn't acceptable. Like, could you guys please put your phones down?
Yeah.
And they're all like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, right. And I do it too. There have been times where I've been watching something that my kids are doing and looked at my phone and been like, put your phone down. Like, they see you doing that. And so it's going to come back to bite you because they're going to be like, well, you do it too, right? And then you lose that control over being able to teach them the right way.
Absolutely.
Which the right way is, let's have better communication and one-to-one,
Yep. Over the years, another area that I have seen is people like to blame the technology. Oh, if we didn't have this technology, this wouldn't be happening, especially things like bullying, those kinds of behaviors. And I've always thought that it's so important to take the technology out of what's happening. If someone's bullying, take the technology out and address the behavior. And Gaggle alerts us to what is happening so that we can address the behavior, because it isn't the technology's fault. It is the behavior that needs to change. And without the technology, that behavior would manifest itself somewhere else. And so, it is a behavior issue, not a technology issue, although
for sure,
technology exacerbates it at times.
It's funny too, like we've had so many principals even say this has been such a godsend for us because we get a heads up to the bullying and we can bring the student in and be like, so is there any particular reason why you found it necessary to hurt so-and-so today by saying these things?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And they're like, what do you mean? It's not necessarily that they got gaggled. Sometimes the kids don't even know that gaggle's in the school district, but it allows that principal or that guidance counselor to have that conversation and figure out from their angle, how do we not use gaggle as being a bad thing, but as a really good thing for context and communication. And I'll tell you, the districts that have gaggle, it's not that the kids communicate less, because they don't. Again, in that 3 weeks it takes a habit, a lot of times they slow down and they're like, oh, we don't want to get gaggled, right? But then fast forward, they forget that they're being monitored because they just want that immediate feedback. And also on a good note, that's when we see a lot of the kids reaching out and saying something about a friend that's in trouble and saying, I don't want to tattletale, but I'm hoping that I can write this way and that someone will pick it up and get this person help. And that is amazing for us. That's like a happy day for us. Yeah.
That reminds me, I have always wanted to ask you this question, and I never have. I can't believe it. How did Gaggle get its name? Is there a story behind it?
So I will tell you, there is 2 stories behind it. Jeff will tell you the story about multiple, letters going together and how that's a good business name. But it was also behind the idea of a gaggle of geese. So a gaggle following a team. So there's some couple of stories on it, but I don't like to speak on it. I always ask our CEO to, but those are the 2, either a bunch of G's together that sounds really good, which is confused Gaggle with Google, right? And also the idea of a gaggle. What is a gaggle? What is the definition of a gaggle? And that gaggle of geese sticking together, a classroom of learning. So
kind of a team concept, working together.
Yep.
Yes.
Very cute.
Wow.
But definitely lock him down, Jerry, next time you see him.
I will.
And let him go into it. It's
and
pretty cool.
I'll find the history of this. Yes, absolutely. Well, Gretchen, it has been a delight to have you on and to hear about how your company has been so influential in helping save lives and intervening when behaviors are inappropriate. And I also appreciated hearing about what parents can do at home. And I know you have some links for us that we're going to put in the show notes so that parents, teachers, whoever is listening can go there and click on those links and find more information out there. So it has been such a pleasure to have you here today. We thank you for joining us, and we thank our listeners for joining us and finding us here.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.